Lecture 12, Filtering Groups with Having. When you are working with group data in SQL, sometimes you only want to focus on certain groups like majors with more than 10 students or departments with a total budget above a specific number. While the where clause helps filter rows before grouping, it's the having clause that lets you filter after groups are formed. That's exactly what we are focusing on today. In this lecture, you will learn how the having clause works with group by to filter grouped results. You'll see how having complements aggregate functions like count, sum, and average, and we'll go over several examples to show how it can be used in practical situations. Objectives of the lecture. By the end of this lecture, you will be able to understand the difference between where and having. Learn how to filter group data using the having clause. Use having with aggregate functions such as count and sum. Write meaningful summary queries that return only relevant grouped results. Why use having? When you use group by, SQL creates groups of rows. But what if you only want to see certain groups, like only those that have a certain numbers of records? That's where having comes in. Let's say you want to find all major subjects with more than 5 students. So you can just write in here as the statement. You can write select and major subject. This is the column name that we really want to filter, and you can just write in here as count asterisk and as total students. Okay, now the table name from student and group by major subject, and end this query and run this query like in here. Here you can see you have only one subject of arts which have greater than 5 students, but let's assume we just change it to 3 for example and run this query. Then we have science as well, that it has 4 students enrolled. But what if we just change it to 1 and run this query? Then we have history as well, it has 2 students enrolled. So this is how you can use having in SQL. Here, having works after the grouping. It checks the results of count for each group and only returns the ones that meet the condition. Having versus where. This is a common confusion, so let's clear it up. Where filter rows before they are grouped. Having filters groups after they are formed. If you try to use where with an aggregate functions like count, it won't work. For example, let's say it gives us this answer, but for example you just want to change it to where clause, then you just have to from student and just change it to where clause. Okay, so for example we write in here where count asterisk greater than 5 and group by major subject. And run this query. So here you can see it just gives us an error that invalid use of group function. Here you can see. This example will throw an error because where does not recognize count function. More examples of having. You can use other aggregate functions with having, such as sum, average, and max function. For example, if you want to use sum function with having clause, so you can just write in here as select major subject and use sum function as, for example, marks as total marks. Now the table name from student, group by major subjects, and having clause sum marks greater than 300 for example. And when you just run this query, then it shows that if the sum are greater than 300, then it will show this one. But let's assume we just write a statement in here as greater than 400, let's assume, then it must show only one row as ours because it is greater than 400. So when you just run this query, so we have only one record in here. But let's assume we have greater than 100. When you just run this query, then we have all the subject sum, as we have history 183. So this is how you can use sum function with having clause as well. Average of subjects for each measure filtered by a condition. For example, if you want to have an average with specific conditions, so we will write in here as select major subject and comma average function with marks, okay, as average marks. Now we just write the table name from student group by major subjects and having average marks greater than, for example, 50. And when you just run this query, we have all these subjects. As science average is 79, arts average is 67, and history is at 91.5. But let's assume we just change it to 60 or 70. So when you just run this query, we have only two results, as this meets this condition that the average of marks must be greater than 70. And when you just change it to 80 and run this query, and now we have only one record of average, as this condition is only meeting on this history subject. You can also combine where and having in one query. For example, you just want to write in here as select major subject and count steric as total. Now from student table name, where age is greater than 25, group by major subject and having count steric greater than 3. So when you just run this query, you don't have any result, as we have no student which is enrolled in 3 subjects. So when you just write in here as 1, then we have 2 students who are greater than 24 and enrolled in 2 subjects as well. In this case, where filters the data to only students greater than 25 of their age, and then having filters the grouped results.